So then we are back with more understandings from the time of the autumn feasts writings. So then these writings are from the original manuscripts of the prophets of Yahweh, giving us then the understanding of the time of the end. And from Yirmiyahu, the 61st chapter, then we find ourselves understanding what it means of the time of restoration, and also the time of the reduction from Metchiach, the 24th chapter. So then, these days where we find the world and its systems then at very dire straits in terms of the economy, we begin our quest then understanding what goes on amongst the nations, and then the desire of returning to the old junkies. Per then the prophecy, the time of 1,000 years given to Nahashatan was ended in 0809, and we are during the time of restoration. So then we find ourselves, many nations then coming together and try to re-establish the old junkies with new ideas, and certainly does not work. We already talked regarding then Israel and Gaza. Yahweh had then started the disciplining of Israel in terms of the restoration, and then we got ourselves in the midst of it. We bought the war, and then we had removed the discipline of Israel via Yahweh, because He always uses nations in order for them, or then Israel, to become then people that would humble themselves before the mighty hand of Yahweh. Not only this, but then we have set up ourselves for more expenses and we do not have, with the pretext and then pretending then in the future, as we understand our president, he can't no longer revitalize our economy. That's why he is then joining the Asians in the Pacific and also the Muslim world, because he knows our country won't survive. He knows our economy is absolutely ruined. In the next 40 years, then he's going to try his utmost to get the most out of this country in order to gain leadership of the Muslims and then to sustain our nation when it breaks. There is no other understanding from the situation in our country, because quite honestly, in order for us to maintain a proper government lean and simple, we must privatize, and it's not taking place. So then you begin to understand why there is this huge push of not having any industry to back up our decisions amongst other nations. Then we find, obviously, the president being involved with the Islam and the Islamic world, and then helping as much as he can until our economy truly breaks. And then he is obviously asking for help from the Islamic world. It's very obvious. When a person is seriously then understanding the gravity of our economy, the first order is then restoration via privatization. You can't start any place else. You can't start making deals with other countries without having not enough energy. We don't have enough infrastructure, and then we are importing oil yet, and we are not revitalizing our economy. In the long run, as we understand, IMF has given us 5 years since last year, then from this year would be 40 years. And then we find ourselves in a very huge predicament. So then analyze what goes on when Israel then becomes involved in a situation. First, then, the discipline was removed for a time because our purchase of the war. Second, we find then Egypt going back to their own junkies. There was Mubarak over there for decades ruling the nation, and what goes on is a person is speaking going forward, but then received the ultimate power in Egypt. Same old junkies. And then what do you think is going to become of Syria when it gets related with the world's market? They are going to select another person to do precisely what the previous dictator did. So they begin to observe then the nature of the old junkies. And then our president, obviously, he's going to become Republican. Because as these nations then, they are doing what they used to do in the past, what do you think is going to become of Islam in our country? Our country is absolutely ruled by Jewish. He's going to go around and around and around and around making promises to those Asians, but they know we are ruined. In a short 40 years, then, we are not going to be able to hold the market. And he hopes then in the future the Islamic world would be able to help us maintain our economy in line, but they won't. They won't because the United States is mostly governed by Jewish. And there is no mixing of Islam and Jewish beliefs. So our president is going to go around and around and around. At the very end, when Egypt then already have a new dictator, it's not dictatorship yet, but it's lining up for it, because the old junkies always remains as it was. Mubarak is gone. They are thinking on another type of democracy, but giving absolutely power to a person. So you want to watch and then return to the old junkies. And then you find Israel, obviously, tried to get their way through. They fought the war and they got money for it. Our money that we do not have. Yet they received. So then, obviously, our country is already on a shelf. Observe the situation. If you were then a person nominated as the president, what would you do with a monstrosity of government? You would reduce, obviously. So how come it's not taking place? Because it's not the plan. The plan is having our country bankrupt and then being saved by the Islam or the Islamic countries. In order then for them to extend their hands and then lift up our country while then becoming Islamic. Try to understand a person making deals without the proper industry. How can you go out amongst the world and then making friendships without having absolutely nothing to give? You have to have a future idea where you cash your idea in advance. And this is what we did. We purchased the war of Israel in Gaza with our future. And then we are purchasing also a gamble in the future, and we understand it won't work. Because the prophecies already indicated won't. Obviously, because Islam does not mix with Judaism. They never mix. So then the idea is, since the economy is going to be ruined and Israel can't save our nation, obviously he's going to the other people, the most numerous. But the problem with this is then drifting away from the prophecies. Because Israel is going to destroy our economy. So the fact that we have then purchased the war, we have removed the discipline of Yahweh in order for Israel to return to their services. Then we have owned their problems until they destroy our country. And then we are going to try to find help from the Muslims. We are exchanging our future for an Islamic state. The only problem is Yahweh wants His cities back in place. So is the plan going to work? Of course not. Because the focus and the shifting of Israel is going to be ultimately of the cities being rebuilt. So then by the time then Israel is then engaged in rebuilding the cities, then our country is nearly non-existent. And the risk of becoming an Islamic state is very big. Because Israel is going to return to their true beliefs, while then the other countries, they are going to be on their own. And since we are not recuperating our industry, we are going to become dependent of the Islamic world. That's why he's so prominently then speaking with Arab nations to the point of bowing down, already indicating he is then subjected then to the king. So begin to analyze the situation, and you begin then to understand what goes on. Our economy is not going to recuperate. People know it won't. The main factor is you can't maintain a monstrosity of government without leaning up and then strengthening the economy. It doesn't work that way. First, the country must leaning up first, get rid of the agencies, only maintaining what's absolutely important, and then invest in our infrastructure, more energy, and then inviting the countries to come and produce in our country high technological equipment, new technologies. Always focusing then on quality and serviceability. We always thrive in great quality and serviceability in the past. As we understand, the Chinese, they always produce in a lot of quantities, but then the quality sometimes does not match long-term usage. Have to replace more often. We were notorious in the past for producing great quality equipment serviceable for long term. This is what it lacks mostly in the world. As we understand, German economy is also very strong, but they produce equipment that's very complicated and sometimes not easily serviceable and expensive. So then we have a chance of organizing our industry prior of the ruining of our economy. Because there are not very many options. And the old junkies are already returning. Israel has its own ways, and then already Egypt is finding a new leader, already given ultimate powers, speaking the same language as our president, moving forward, and then becoming an Islamic state. Obviously, because it was the first president in our history of our country that in fact did bow down to an Islamic king. We already subjected to their leadership. Because the leadership of our country, they know our country is going to break. But if we have strong ties with the Arab world, then we can receive help when the time comes. Evaluate what makes a nation productive is then the management of the government. Our government can't be managed anymore. How do you manage a monstrosity of a system without having enough industry to back it up? And then the government is not being reduced. The only section left yet is the printing out of more money, cashing our future in advance. IMF already calculated maximum of 40 years and then ruin. And we already started with the wrong path. If we would have had then taken the path of Yahweh as previously, we would invite the Chinese, we would have a conversation with them, we would try to set up a deal with them, we would make easy payments, then we would ask for them to be more active in patrols, and then we would gradual retrieving from the world scenario military-wise, to then we should resume our expenses in terms of coming up with the plans of placing our economy under the control, and then reducing then our agencies, and then reserving for the future. We already doing wrong. We did not speak with China. We purchased a war that was not ours. We have then taken away the discipline of Yahweh. And then we already going to set up another leader of Egypt, kind of going the same line as the previous dictator. And then the old junkies are returning. The only conclusion this country can become aware of, we are becoming an Islamic state. The first time ever a president of this country has bowed down to an Arabian king. What do you think it says? Try to understand the meaning of it. Meaning he is a subject. In the future, when our nation breaks, then we would have help from them. This means that our industry is already broken. They don't have any more hopes in revitalizing our industry. That's why they are not privatizing. Because they have taken the path of destruction and bankruptcy coming in the next 40 years. So why then making up stories and try to deceive the people of our country thinking that they're going to recuperate the country when the country is already broken? They are already cashing the future of our bankruptcy. The idea of our government is to become Islamic. Try to understand why he bowed down to the king, because he knows in the future we're going to have their help. Only a truly blind person can't understand the facts. More factories are going out of trade, more people out of work. The reduction of unemployment is very significant. And then we don't have enough to revitalize our industry comparing with the monstrosity of expenses that our government requires. So our country should be prepared of becoming an Islamic state. Because the faith of our president is from the Islam, from the lineage of Ishmael. At least people are not deceived anymore. Let me ask you this. From a viewpoint of a person not involved with industry, because our president was a city organizer, it does not relate with the regular trade of everyday living. mostly related with a high ranking, and then, easy comes, easy goes. He doesn't have experience with the world's market in terms of manufacturing. Doesn't have the experience. Not saying it's a bad person, of course not. It's not the point. But then where is the knowledge and experience in manufacturing? It doesn't have. So the normal situation in terms of these is leave the way it is, let it break, and then he bows down to the Arabian king, and when the time comes, then he has help. So people should prepare themselves in a very short time, next 40 years, to become an Islamic state. Because the giver factor was, first, he did submit to Islam, he bowed down to a king. Second, we are not privatizing as we should have. If this was taking place 50 years ago, we would be privatizing in the first month. Because our resolve back then in maintaining our industry was very big. But it's no longer the requirement, because those people up there in the government, they don't have much experience with the outside world in terms of manufacturing. They were born and raised in the easy comes, easy goes. And then let the system go to heck and find help then from other nations. Precisely what goes on. So at least our people are not deceived. So then, this means, since we are not privatizing, do you think the countries considering coming to U.S. to do trade, do you think they would come? Are they going to invest in a monstrosity of a system where then there is no more industry, at least to pay for the expenses, and they are cashing the future in advance? It's going to break. There are many patriots in our country yet, but we have come to a conclusion, understanding our economy is not going to recuperate. Because we already have taken the wrong turn. We should be making plans of reducing our expenses, cleaning up our government. We should retrieve from the world's waters and the minimum of a military and invest in our infrastructure. We are not doing any of it. And the situation is, until then, Yahweh has said via Shimon, discipline is coming upon then the people of Elohim. If those two ramifications of Abraham would work together at a distance without the prophecy, it probably would work. The problem is there is a prophecy related with the returning of the holy cities and the discipline of Israel. The discipline of Israel is coming shortly. And Yahweh always uses countries to get his work done. Read the scripture. And destroying the prophet does not change the prophecy. Read Yeshayahu, read Yirmiyahu. They can destroy the prophet, but the prophecies remain. So at least our country is no longer deceived. We understand from A to Z our economy is not going to improve. Because the first indicator when there is a desire to make it to improve is reduction of its workers, diminishing of agencies, leaning up the government, privatizing. It's not taking place. Our industry is already in bad shape and is going to get worse. So then there are a few options. Either we then understand the holy city and then help finding then the holy site and get this city built as per the desire of Yahweh, and it's coming anyway, or then our president must be impeached because he's not a U.S. born president. And then electing a person understanding the economy, understanding industry. Because for those people that do understand the economy and the way it works, without leaning up a company, when expenses they come and you can pay them, then the gates they close. The government is the same way. It takes a bit longer because of the many years of great work done in the past, and because of the value of the money takes some time. But then the value of the market and the paper money no longer matches, and then comes trouble. Great inflation, and then the money is no worth. Comparing our money with the British pound, our money is only value of half. Half a pound is roughly our money. Used to be the strongest monetary system in the world. Shortly 10 years ago was. So either we then become an Islamic state, precisely what's coming, because this government already knows our economy can't be fixed. It truly can if they do the homework. But they don't want to do the homework. They want to maintain the government as it is without perspective of improving our economy. Because let me ask you this, what is it going to take for our country to become then 100% independent of foreign oil? It requires petroleum platforms, perforation sites, but we are not even starting with those. We are not even a quarter matched for the great undertake of becoming then 100% independent. If people are not doing their homework and understanding what is coming, they can prepare themselves to become Muslims. You know, the bowing down of the entire United States to an Arabian king meant we are already subjected. It was not only a mere shaking of hands. So we have only a couple of options. Let it go as it is and then be destroyed in the next 40 years, and then we are being then later lifted up by the Muslim world. Or then we impeach the president and put another person in charge and then get our country back in its original form. Industry. Leaning up of our government, get rid of every agency except FEMA and the Secret Services, and invest in our infrastructure, more energy, more jobs, more perforation, more crude, utilizing coal, double filtering, and then reducing our military might from around the world in order to reserve, making a deal with China. China can do more patrols, they can pay for those, we can't. And no longer be involved with Israel. Yeah, as we said, Israel has the right of defending itself, but then we had to pay for the war. Both nations, they fought the war, not our war, but then we gave Israel money. The war was purchased by money cashed in the future of ours. Because the president knows our country is already defeated. And he's spending time in Asia and amongst the Muslims, and he's trying to make a deal with them, because when our nation breaks, then they can lift us up. In exchange for it, obviously, they're going to become Muslims. So then a couple of options. Remains as it is, or then impeachment, and then work very diligently in our economy, leaning up our government, and promoting more industry. And the country has legal basis because our president is not born in USA. He was born overseas. If he would truly present his birth certificate to a laboratory, it was falsified. We were hoping, though the document is false, but himself being a nice person, he would at least privatize and lean up our government. But it's not taking place. Because by the time our country is ready to be broken, then the government, they have so much money of their own, they can't live any place else in the world. They are not interested in living in our country anymore. They can go any place else where they have English-speaking people. They have so much money, it can last for a lifetime. So that's why the nation is, in due course, is going to be broken. So then let's understand more the prophecies, and let's try not to be involved with the world's crazy understandings of the Mideast, because they think they own the world. They understand that Yahweh is going to discipline his nation. Let's watch the next events. Please stay tuned.